Strategic Media and Public Relations is bringing together dynamic companies, investors, and consumers like no one before. And we're doing it in a unique way while addressing the big changes underway in our world. Our world is fraught with both peril and opportunity. The world is changing. Long-term conflicts are shaping up over commodities, currencies, and influence. Political lines are shifting. Yet mankind moves on to meet the needs of a growing world. Newer, cleaner energy, medical breakthroughs, ways to better our lives, better ways to move into the future. Join us now for today's topic.
Well, folks, welcome in. We're delighted to bring you one of our newest and coolest stories, if you will, today, and that being Guanajuato Silver. Guanajuato Silver is the fastest growing primary silver producer in Mexico. I've known the chairman and CEO, James Anderson, who you're going to meet momentarily, for a number of years. He's a well-seasoned mining executive in all over the Western Hemisphere, and one of the best and most honest people I've ever met in this industry. And it's a real joy to have had at least some sense or some luck or both in getting my readers at the National Investor involved fairly early on in Guanajuato Silver's story. A lot of folks have made a lot of money already. The stock price has come down a fair bit in the recent past, along with other precious metal stories, but we're still up something like 7 or 8-fold from when James first started to put this company together. And I think its best days are still ahead of it, largely because of my outlook for silver and gold prices as well in the coming few years. Now, before I bring James on and we really get into the nuts and bolts of Guanajuato, a couple of housekeeping things. First of all, the regulators would be upset if we didn't let you know that James and or myself may be making what could be construed as forward-looking statements. So we want to make sure that you realize that everybody's good intentions aside, not everything goes according to plan sometimes, and be of a mind that you need to do homework on this company. You need to follow us, follow Guanajuato, etc., and do your own due diligence as well. Also, for us here at Strategic Media and Public Relations, we do various services, media and otherwise, for Guanajuato Silver, as well as our other clients and causes, and we would refer you in that regard here to our page of our terms of service and terms of use for the things that we put out here at Strategic Media and Public Relations. As you've seen, Guanajuato Silver is traded on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the symbol GSVR, and it's on the OTCQX here in the US. And that symbol, I got to look at it again, always make sure I get it right, because sometimes they're a little different, but this is not that much different. GSVR and then F at the end. So, of course, with a lot of foreign listed stocks on the OTC, you've got that 5-letter symbol that always ends with an F. So, without further ado, I want to bring on my old friend, James Anderson, Chairman and CEO of Guanajuato Silver. James, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year ahead of time, and looking forward to another good year for Guanajuato.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Great seeing you, and top of the season to you as well.
Now, we're going to get into kind of a high-level view for you folks to give you a meaty, but as brief as we can do it, introduction today to Guanajuato Silver. But going forward, I urge you to keep up with both Guanajuato Silver directly, as well as with us. In each of our cases, as you're seeing here, you can sign up for our email lists. Make sure to follow us on social media from time to time when Guanajuato Silver puts out news. We will also be recirculating their press releases, sometimes with some added comments of our own and insights. So make sure that you're on our list for that, as well as on Guanajuato Silver's list. So for present purposes, though, I think it would be easiest for all of you if we break down Guanajuato Silver's story to 3 things. First of all, why silver? And correspondingly gold, but there's a little bit of overlap there. Secondly, why Mexico? And third, in Mexico, which as you're going to see is still today by far and away the largest single silver producer in the world, why Guanajuato Silver in that mix? So James, when you and I got together recently when you were here in Florida. We met down in Miami and had lunch. You reminded me of a commentary that you put out in October, which looked pretty, pretty prescient looking back at it then.
Yeah, I
That
look pretty smart right now. Let's take a snapshot.
Yeah, let's take a snapshot. But let's. Yeah, I'm always pining for that tricked out DeLorean with a flux capacitor, so I can go into the future and see if I'm really right or not. And I'm sure you'd love to have that too. But anyway, you put out a commentary explaining the reasons why you think silver is in the bottoming process, and why nothing goes up in a straight line, just like it doesn't go down in a straight line. But why you're pretty jazzed up about the prospects for silver. So give us the Cliff Notes reasons why you're so bullish on silver.
Yeah, okay. So let's divvy it up to a couple things. So first of all, precious metals, and really the article, the short article that I wrote in October, calling the bottom in the precious metals prices, which again looks pretty smart right now. Um, Really had to do, and I wrote almost exclusively about gold. When we think precious metals, we look at gold primarily. It's a bigger market than silver, and I think the notion of gold as a currency, as a store of value in declining currency values, I think makes sense to most investors. And really, I picked four different points that I thought were applicable to my rationale for calling the bottom. They were in no particular order, Chris. Monetary in nature, fiscal in nature, technical, and social, if you will. First of all, from a monetary standpoint, we've had an extraordinarily fast interest rate rise, led by the Federal Reserve in the United States, but central banks all over the world rising interest rates. At the peak of those cycles, and when they begin to decline, that's when gold especially performs the best. And I think, in October, I think the cards were pretty much on the table. Chairman Powell admitted this about a month later. Okay, we're just about done here. And I think the market in gold anticipated that by about 30 days and moved from in some point in the low 1800s to 2000 very swiftly. So and of course that momentum has maintained itself, and as of this morning we're at about $2,070, very, very close to all-time highs, which were set earlier this month. From a fiscal perspective, and what I wrote was that in the 2008 crisis, we had these emergency measures where, again, from an American perspective, there were $2 trillion deficits that were in play. But this was a once in a generation, never going to happen again situation, except that today that's just de rigueur. That happens every year now, at a time of general prosperity and general peace in the world. So I think that is a sign of the debasement of fiat currencies all around the world, and of course, importantly, or most importantly, in the United States, because the United States dollar continues to be the most important currency, trading currency in the world, the reserve currency in the world. The other key points, I think, technically, there's been a lot said in the media about gold having this triple top, and what I wrote was that that is a very important thing. They're very, very rarely is there a technical experience that we have a triple top in anything that you're charting. However, it's a very long graph that people are looking at in terms of timeline, and people expected that the moment you had that, we'd have a big run to the upside. In my experience, that doesn't happen very often. Usually you have that triple top and the thing backs away for a period of time. And if you're looking at a 20-year chart, well, that can be a number of months before we reach it again. However, very rarely do triple tops don't mean nothing. And I think that what I saw in October was, well, that you can't take that away from the chart. That happened. And so what's going to happen next? And I think the rise above that. And then the perhaps the most contentious thing that I wrote um, is a social mood that I think sociologists sense, and I sense, and a lot of my friends and colleagues sense. The world wants war right now in a way that we haven't sensed or had for 80 years. There's many politicians and people in the world who think that a war can be won. And war is breaking out all over the world, certainly in the Middle East, in Eastern Europe. Those are the ones that are most in the headlines. But there are wars in Sudan. The British just sent a naval vessel towards Guyana because Venezuela wants to take over part of Guyana for the first time in 60 or 80 years. So this is happening all over the world, and there's nothing that is more expensive that human beings do than wage war. And I believe that we'll have war all over the world at a time when certainly all of the Western countries are effectively bankrupt. So what are they going to pay for all of these bullets and beans with? They will pay for it with fiat currency, which they will simply print up and fire out the door with fire hoses, and that will lead to stronger precious metals prices. So that's in a nutshell, that's what I wrote, and I guess I still believe most of that.
Well, and I do as well. And the last of those, of course, is regrettable. I would agree. It's interesting, and those who have followed the story of precious metals, the dynamics of both gold and silver alike, realize that even though when it comes to investors in equity markets, there has not been a lot of emphasis in recent times on mining stocks of almost all kinds, because there's still too much fun to be had for the moment, which I think is not going to last terribly much longer with the Magnificent Seven stocks and the cryptocurrencies and all of these other things out there. But the flip side is people who are in the know, be it central banks, be it individual investors, they're buying gold in the case of central banks, gold and silver alike in the case of some individual investors, physical gold, as fast as they can get their hands on it. And even with what in some ways has been a weaker market, even for silver in recent few years, try and find silver at a reasonable premium.
Right.
I remember the day, and I know you do too, James, where, spot silver, you paid 3 or 4% over the spot price of silver. Now you're lucky to pay 20 or 30% over the
Right.
spot price of silver to get silver around. So some people are waking up to this. And this is a subject, by the way, folks, we don't want to spend too much time on it because there's going to be other content more specifically about gold and silver we'll be bringing you. But these are some of the high points. And we're going to get to a couple other reasons down the road. But you look at silver too, James, before we leave this. Even if you buy half of what the social planners, the government people that are trying to lead us into this energy transition, even if you buy half of what they're selling, that means likewise a significant increased demand for silver for solar panels and the like that just isn't there. I mean, you've got a slide in your deck that we'll share here as we do a few others as we go along about what the shortfall is for
Right.
silver in the world right now. There is more demand year to year than there is new supply coming out of silver mines. Now you've got some recycling, you got this and that, but long term, and this is a bigger theme that we've talked about here on our strategic media site previously and with other content shortly to come. The way I boiled this down, frankly, was that if people want to understand all markets and all investment themes for 2024, you need to understand three words: supply, supply, and supply. Okay. You hit on one of the supply subjects a moment ago with just the burgeoning volume of debt that needs to be financed and refinanced on a part of sovereign governments. That's one of a host of reasons why inflation is not going back to all of these central banks, nice tame targets. And the other side where there's not enough of things is you look all the way down the line from uranium to nickel to copper, to silver, even to gold. There's just not enough supply because for a lot of years there's been underinvestment, underdevelopment, and for a lot of these things, that part of the dynamic, if not the biggest part of the dynamic going forward, is not going to be rising prices for these commodities because the economies are wonderful and they're so great. It's going to simply be because of shortages. So silver is I think one of the unheralded stories going forward on that. So let's get off of silver for a minute and talk about Mexico, which a moment ago we pointed out is by far and away the biggest producer of silver in the world. You and I have compared notes in the past and shared information about a lot of the history of how that was Mexico was Spain's bank account for an awful long time,
Right.
back centuries ago.
Well, that's right. Mexico has been the country that produces the most silver in the world by a long margin for many, many decades. The countries that come in second and third, I think, are Bolivia and Peru. And I think the other key element in what you're talking about, Chris, in that supply congestion that we've got right now, we've got 3 years ongoing right now of pretty severe supply deficits or supply demand deficits in the silver market. So you're having a drawdown of any excess inventory that there might be out there. But I think a key element in that is that there simply are very, very few large silver mines in the world. The good Lord just didn't make large silver deposits like that, where you can go in and get silver. Almost all of it comes as byproduct. So about 70% of the world's silver is produced as byproduct. So you get copper mines with some silver, gold mines with some silver, and especially lead and zinc mines with some silver. And that is true, especially in Mexico. And one of our key theses is that, well, you're not going to put a new lead and zinc mine into production in a recessionary environment just to get byproduct silver out of it. And so I think that you're going to continue to have these supply constraints in the silver market for some time to come.
Well, I agree. And look, I think that as time goes on, when you look at higher costs around the world for everything, you've got the subject that our president, Eric Verdez, and I touched on in one of our videos a while ago, resource nationalism. There's a whole host of reasons why across the board costs are rising the world over. Supplies from some countries are going to be difficult to get of a lot of different commodities because countries, right or wrong, over the politics of this, but countries who in the past feel wronged by the so-called imperialists that came in and took their resources and left them with crumbs, those days are pretty much over. And so everywhere you look, higher input costs, higher labor, more seniorage, if you will, from countries that have disproportionate amounts of commodities. All of those things are going to require higher prices to get these things out of the ground. And I think a lot of people have not woke up to that fact yet. The all-time high for silver was what, in the low 50s, I think, James, and a couple of different times.
At a couple of different times, that's right.
Yeah.
And we're a long, long way from that.
Yeah. And it's going to take that to really, in my opinion, bring a lot more production to bear. Look at what just happened in the recent past with the uranium price. We've gone from a low of under $20 a pound to over $90 a pound.
Right.
As we're recording this, and only now with prices looking like they're going to hang around there, are you starting to see producers, get their heads back out of the sand and come forward and say, okay, we'll start producing again because of that we can make some money. This is going to repeat itself everywhere. And I don't think a lot of people are prepared across the food chain, investors or end users, either one, for how much higher prices are going to have to go for all of these things to get more supply out there and to close some of these gaps. Real quick before we go into Guanajuato and really in the nuts and bolts of the company, because that's the main reason why we're here. All of these others are preliminaries in a sense. There's been a lot of chatter. You and I talked about this at some great length a couple of different times recently about how Mexico, even though it is a major mining jurisdiction and has been for a long time, has thrown a couple of monkey wrenches into the works, if you will, in the recent past. The big thing I know that doesn't impact you because all your operations are underground, you're all permitted for what you're already doing. The big thing is that they're not going to allow any open pit mines going forward in Mexico if the current proposals are solidified. And that alone is it underscores what we're saying is that, okay, if you're not going to have open pit mines to get the easy stuff that's lower grade, that's even less of a supply that's going to be available going forward.
Well, I think that's true. So let's divvy that up into a couple of different topics.
Sure.
What you're alluding to is a new mining law that was presented, by the current Mexican government. It was really, jammed through Congress there. It's now undergoing a number of different court challenges within Mexico, and I expect that to continue, right through to the Mexican federal election next July. So I think that the jury is out about how much, if any, of that particular law, the way that it's written, will survive and be enacted. There are, it's not like most legislation. It's not totally crazy. Like if you look at some of the points that they're trying to make. Um, uh, Currently, I mean, one of the things that the Mexican government wants to change is having mining companies hold on to mining claims for decades and not really do anything with them. And their point is, well, look, like, move forward, do something on the ground, move the project forward, or give those back up to the government so that they can have another company come in and do something constructive with it. And that's an example of something that you go, yeah, okay, well that makes some sense. They should be, they should do something about that. The methodology within most of the law as written, though, it's really juvenile in the way that it's written, and I think it's going to be very, very difficult to enact over a long period of time. With regards open pits, never mind what our Mexican friends and the Mexican government has to say about it. I look around the world. I don't know that you're going to have a large open pit mining operation permitted anywhere on planet Earth ever again. People don't want it, right? People don't want it in their neighborhoods. People don't want it generally. Mining, most humans, if you ask them, they say, "Oh yeah, mining, very important. That's great. Yeah, we love you guys. We need all those raw material." Well, not here, not where I'm living, So if all of our mines are underground mines, and I think, and that was very deliberately done. And I think that moving forward, I think that that's going to be very important. If mining can take place in a community, in a mining community, but it's a little bit out of sight, out of mind, and we can move forward, on that basis, rather than there being an enormous open pit that people don't want to look at.
Sure. Well, folks, in the days ahead, we're going to get into this more where it concerns Guanajuato Silver or doesn't, as the case may be. Thankfully, at the moment, I think it's accurate to say, isn't it, James, that there is nothing negative that you're having to deal with at this present time as a company in light of this.
In light of the new law, I don't want to sugarcoat it, Chris. I mean,
Right.
there's challenges, there's different challenges about some of our mining claims and reworking those into the future. And this particular government, the federal government, AMLO's government, they are socialists, and they are not mining friendly. I do, however, like to point out to my American friends that, well, Joe Biden's a socialist, and he's not particularly mining friendly either. So there is a lot of that all over the world,
Yep.
and I think it would be unfair to paint the Mexican government any worse than it is or any better than it is. Mining and moving mining projects forward all over the world faces challenges. I think that the mere fact that we were able to take 4 mines, most of which had been shut down, for a period of time, and put them all back online, some as quickly as 4 days, and one of them, took about 6 months. Try and get that done in the Western United States today. And how long would that take? And what would the regulatory regime look like to be able to do that? So the fact that we've got 4 mines and 3 production facilities up and running, in an extraordinarily short period of time. I think that, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's that's the proof in the pudding right there.
I couldn't have put that better myself. It's a perfect segue into the third thing that I wanted to talk about is, why Guanajuato Silver specifically. We could sit here and quote investment gurus over the years about how you buy when there's blood in the streets, how you buy things that are out of favor, how you buy things that are fundamentally sound cheap and ride them higher. You've done all of that and then some in putting together a company with numerous assets that you were able to buy for a song. And this is one of the interesting things really about any industry, but I think about the mining industry especially, and I've seen this with a number of different companies over the years where sometimes different circumstances, better financial times, a new sets of eyes and ears and hands on assets makes a big difference. And as you said, you've been able to put together quite a portfolio of producing assets and not pay a lot of money for them. It all started with your purchase back when from Endeavor Silver. Remind us of those details and costs.
Right. Well, Endeavor had bought the El Cubo mine and mill for about $200 million in 2012. We paid $15 million for it. And that was after Endeavor had spent about $30 million building the mill complex that exists there today. We spent about $5 million refurbishing it. Now, Endeavor did that at a time when silver prices had peaked and there was a lot of excitement in the marketplace. Endeavor, has continues to be a large shareholder of ours, and we've got a very good rapport with those guys. So I don't want to sound like I'm kicking them in the shins too much, but I think it would be universally accepted that maybe they paid a little bit too much for that asset. And built a plant that I think is too big for the mine. So from our perspective, we wanted to buy all of those assets very cheaply, which we did, get it back into production as quickly as possible, which we did. And now really what we're trying to do is to fill the capacity that plant has. It continues to have excess capacity, and without giving too much away, I think you'll see more news from our company in the next 30 days or so regarding other ideas that we've got about trying to fill excess capacity at that plant.
And the other major acquisition more recently was a set of assets that you got from Great Panther Silver, and here again, these things happen from time to time in the mining industry where a company bites off more than they can chew. If you have a run up in metals prices, everybody gets feeling like they're bulletproof and goes out on a limb to acquire assets and as, uh-oh, we went too far. And then they got to get rid of some of them. And well, in Great Panther's case, it led to bankruptcy and that benefited you.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, it wasn't a completely linear path, but that company did not invest any new money in their Mexican mines for a number of years. They diverted all of the money to what they felt was a bigger, more important gold mine in Brazil. That mine ended up having some severe problems and bankrupted the company. Okay, so how does that benefit us? Well, we get to buy undervalued, underinvested operations, 3 mines, 2 production facilities, again, for a similar price that we paid for El Cubo, a little less than $15 million. So I like to wave my arms a little bit, Chris, and tell people that, well, I think that we've bought about $400 million worth of mining assets for $30 million. And although we've got a whole bunch of, challenges in the mining business right now, and certainly up until recently, the low silver prices in comparison to any other metal, I think that it's almost always a really good idea to try and buy assets in a capital intensive business really cheap. We've done that, and now we have to execute that and build these assets back up to what they should be and to a level of investment which the previous owners, for different reasons, chose not to invest in them.
And so your production profile then in the last 4 or so years since you started acquiring these assets, got them all online, has increased fairly significantly. Tell us, as 2023 is about done, what your total production has been now for 2023, silver and silver equivalent ounces.
Yeah, so we talk silver equivalent, and for your listeners, silver equivalent for us, the revenue for our company comes about 50% from silver, 40% from gold, and about 10% from lead and zinc. And we equate those into silver equivalent ounces to easily see how our production's doing. The third quarter was not great for us, and we had a significant retrenchment in our production. Other than that, every other quarter has been incrementally larger production since we started operating the mines. And I guess the other point in that, to answer your question, we start off from zero production in 2021. We will do something north of 3.5 million silver equivalent ounces produced in 2023, and we'll have exact numbers in the weeks ahead once this quarter and once the year end is established.
And then going forward, I think for someone looking at this from an investment standpoint, the value proposition is you've got these assets. This isn't greenfield exploration. They're known resources. You're producing. You do have a lot of exploration upside, which people can learn more of at your website. And again, folks, do your own homework. Don't just watch this video. We're going to have more goodies for you in the weeks and months ahead. So will James. But spend some time at their website. Look at their presentation. There is still a great deal of potential upside to their resources down the road. But unlike a lot of companies you can look at that carry relatively more risk, this is a producing company. They've got revenues on and off. They've had net earnings, although the strong Mexican peso put a dent in that recently. Silver prices need to recover a little bit. But that's what I want to focus on as we close, because when you've got a situation like this, where you've got a company with cheaply bought assets, a lot of the bugs have been worked out, some more still need to be. A lot of the play going forward is, if the thesis is correct, that we're going to see precious metals prices move up in the few years ahead. And you're treading water, for lack of a better term, right now. Everything is going okay. You're paying, how many employees is it you're up to now?
About 1,300.
You're paying 1,300 employees, treading water, still in operation. As we see silver and or gold prices, let alone lead and zinc down the road for what you get out of those, move up, a lot of that's going to be going to the bottom line, I think, in the years ahead. And that's really the value proposition.
Yes, 100%. The difference for us on a cash flow basis, going from $22 to $25 silver, is enormous.
Yeah.
We have necessarily spent a lot of money in the last couple of years on additional capex to bring the mines back into production in a safe and 21st century kind of manner. These are very old mines. I'd like to touch on that just for a second,
Sure.
too, Chris. In terms of resource recalculations, we did that with one of our mines, San Ignacio, just a couple months ago. We had some very good drill results throughout 2023 and 2022 as well at San Ignacio, and we had a third party 43-101 resource estimate upgrade there, and in all categories, and you're not necessarily supposed to do this because you're supposed to break up the different categories, but in all categories, we went from about 9 million silver equivalent ounces to about 30 at San Ignacio. So that's really good. However, I'd like to point out too, it's not necessarily that is a real focus for a lot of the other exploration companies, not necessarily a focus for us. Our Valenciana Mines Complex has been in production on and off, but mostly on, for 450 years. We're not going to run out of silver anytime soon there, and I would prefer to have our team be directed towards continuing to ramp up production and make that a real 21st century asset, rather than focus on resource expansion.
Sure, that makes sense. Now, a couple of other quick little things I want to throw in here, James. You guys recently, from your own production, started selling silver bullion.
Yep.
I know there's a lot of other silver mines in North America that do that. Yeah, there's a lot of 1 ounce silver rounds you can find out here to this day from different mines, and now you've got your own. Tell us about why you did that.
Well, one of the leaders of our industry, one of the leading companies in our industry is First Majestic. They've had a bullion store for a decade. There's lots of people who really like, their products and go there. And I don't think that there's anything wrong in industry, and certainly not in the mining industry, of stealing good ideas. We find it really helpful for to be able to direct shareholders and people who are just interested in owning some silver. A lot of people don't, if you're in a small town or haven't done it before, a lot of people just don't know where to go to buy an ounce of silver. So we give them that opportunity. We don't make a huge amount of money on it, but we get to share with people the beautiful logo emblazoned coins and 10-ounce bars that we've had produced. I think that they're the best looking coins anywhere. So people can go on the website and purchase those, and people have been really happy with the quality of the product that we're able to share with them, and the truly the beauty, the unique logos that we've got on the product.
That's cool. And lastly, I want to come back again to your 1,300 employees. You make very plain on your website that they're all Mexican nationals. You
Yep.
hire all a local workforce. That's where your talent pool is, and that is just one of the many elements that has become increasingly important these days for any mining company to have what we broadly call social license to be able to come in and operate in a community, whether it was already pro mining or whether you had to win them over, it doesn't really matter. They need to have skin in the game. They need to realize that this is all for their betterment as well.
Well, that's right. So, on our website and on our presentations, we like to say Somos Guanajuato, right? We are Guanajuato. 100% of the people who are working for us in Mexico are Mexican nationals. We've got 9 people at the corporate head office here in Vancouver. 3 of them are originally from Mexico. And a couple of others, speak Spanish fluently. I don't include myself. So I speak it unfluently. I don't even speak English fluently. So it's a very good setup, because if you look at the vast majority of other expatriate mining companies who go and do business in Latin America or in Africa or anywhere else around the world, whether they're British companies, American companies, Canadian companies, Australian companies, generally they bring 5 or 10% of their management level people and go and kind of run things, and they brag about hiring a bunch of local people. Our situation is different. Ramon Davila, who has one of the best CVs in Mexican mining, is our president. He's in charge of all Mexican operations. He lives in Durango, but spends about 2/3 of his time in the city of Guanajuato, where most of our operations are. Hernan Dorado is our chief strategy officer. Both Hernan and Ramon are on our board of directors, both of which are graduates of the University of Guanajuato School of Mines, which is perhaps Mexico's best mining school. And then it goes on and on from there. So I think calling the company Guanajuato Silver has given our exclusively Mexican team real pride of ownership of the thing, and we're very proud of that. And I think in a 21st century way, this is a better way to do mining, right? So when we need to speak to union members, when we need to speak to governmental members, when we need of all 3 levels of government, they don't need some gringo. They don't need some guy with a surname Anderson at the table to be able to move things forward. And I think it's best done in Mexico, amongst Mexicans.
That's neat. Well, folks, I hope you've appreciated this look at Guanajuato Silver. It's one of the single best company building stories that I've ever seen in this industry in 40 plus years now. James has done a great job. And again, as we said a few minutes ago, if you're bullish on the long-term prospects for the precious metals especially, there's a lot of potential juice here for you. So again, make sure you keep up with us here at Strategic Media. Keep up with James at Guanajuato Silver. Make sure you're on our mailing list for other news. Anybody that signs up, of course, with us, which is what I'm more directly responsible for, we'll keep you in a loop as well as far as what's going on. And we'll have other elements of this story in the weeks and months ahead as well for you to dive a little bit more deeply into. So James, thanks for taking the time with us today. And again, Happy New Year to you and to everyone watching.
Happy New Year. Thanks so much for the opportunity, Chris.
Yeah.
We hope you got a lot out of today's subject. Make sure you avail yourself of the resources and contacts offered today. Subscribe to this channel for future topics and opportunities. And if you have any questions, drop us a line. Thanks for tuning in.